I think it's safe to say that the entire woke movement from top to bottom has completely and utterly lost their collective minds. Truth be told, I didn't want to do this video. I was going to cover Assassin's Creed Shadows instead, but then I logged onto Twitter and saw a company harassing and championing censorship against a friend of mine named Grums, and I went, well, alright, let's talk about it then, so let's get into it. There's a lot to cover here, but firstly, I want to ensure that nobody watching this ever harasses anyone on their side of the aisle. I know that despite, as you'll see, they've done the exact opposite of what I'm doing here, we must never stoop to their level. They are like the Joker, they're trying to bring us all down to their levels, and we can't allow that to happen. The entire reason why all of these things I'll speak about here are happening to begin with is simply for one reason, and that is because they are losing the culture war. Effectively, in every single way, the woke movement, as I fail to call it anything else really, is a group of scrambling nobodies who cling to the personas and names of people they hate in order to stay relevant amongst their basements of supporters, all of whom have become deranged from years of successful propaganda that is changing their brain chemistries. So what's happening? Well, this video is all about Grums, a friend of mine. Grums made World of Warcraft and many other games that you've probably played. He also caught wind that there was this other podcast channel called Western Kabuki that claimed, as you can see here, where they said, "We have a scoop about Grums," and tried to reach him for comment before we publish, but he is shutting down all routes of communication. He is nervous. So, around this time, Flashcast was about to go live. For those who aren't aware, Flashcast is a live show my buddy Yellow Flash runs on his channel. I've been a frequent guest somehow for like over a year at this point. I was a guest one time, and then I kind of just never left, sort of like Kramer and Seinfeld. Anyway, Flashcast is every Saturday, and Grums told us prior to the show going live that if he could essentially expose himself before this supposed expose went live. Of course, everybody said, sure man, and while Grums told me some of what was going on beforehand, I told him I actually didn't want to know, just so that he could get my genuine reaction once he actually said it. So he respected that, and then he dropped the bomb. So, Grums admitted that he used to run a softcore website that distributed basically not safe for work content to people for money. He made a killing off of this. It was over 20 years ago when Grums did all of this, and eventually he shut it all down, and his wife and even his mom helped him with his business. Grums, by the way, never did anything illegal according to him. He never showed kids or anything like that. It was, like I said before, softcore, so there wasn't really any nudity either. Obviously now PORN, since I can't say the word on YouTube unfortunately, is very readily available and free all over the internet, which if you ask me has been a net negative on society. But back then, this not safe for work content was usually always paywalled because it was still underground, so to speak, when it came to how it was distributed or consumed back then. So anyway, Grums made content with writers and models to support this sort of stuff back then. So he wasn't in anything himself, he mostly just did the photography and web design. He's a developer after all. Anyway, he made his money, the meta obviously changed, PORN went free, and Grums pretty much just stopped, locked it all down, closed shop, and moved on with his life. Again, nothing illegal, and especially in today's age, a lot of the people who are a part of this so-called woke movement are usually very sex-positive individuals themselves. Free the nipple, they'll say, and all that about women empowerment and trans identity and support sex workers. The usual stuff that these people champion. And look, I don't care whether you support or don't sex workers, but the point of the matter here is that this Western Kabuki channel thought that they got a gotcha against Grums by exposing his legal company that did nothing immoral or illegal at all, again according to Grums. And to be frank, if we take what Grums was distributing back then, as in model pictures and art, compared to what's available today on the internet, even on Twitter, it's literally coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb levels of how bad it is now compared to what it was then. But anyway, Western Kabuki did this. They got a whole video about it that I won't show here because they will likely just copyright me if I do. So Flash showed it on his stream because he doesn't care, and then we watched most of it and found it to be very poorly edited, unengaging, and frankly a lot of it was stupid. At one point, I won't show it here, but they start this expose stating Grums' life history. They literally had a segment where they bring up when Grums was born. I'm not kidding. They're treating him like they're reciting the Bible and when Jesus came to be into existence. It was so stupid we all just burst out laughing. Anyway, the expose really was nothing. Of course, they thought they had something, but like I said, Grums wanted to come forward himself and explain things. So, it turns out this Western Kabuki channel is ran by 3 users specifically. These 3 people are in order: Bird Respecter, Alex Goldman, and Juniper. I have no idea who any of these people are. I've never heard of them. You likely haven't either, which again attests to what I was saying in the beginning, that these nobodies are just clinging to someone like Grums for relevance. Again though, don't harass any of these people. They're not worth your time or dignity to fall down to their pathetic levels. I just want you to be aware of them and know what they did. So anyway, Grums then told us some very interesting stuff live. Firstly, that this Western Kabuki channel has a Patreon that makes about $7,000 a month from backers, yet if you look at their content, they get basically no views at all, which makes this whole thing already shady as hell. But then Grums revealed that he had a mole in the Western Kabuki Discord channel, where they discussed all of this behind closed doors, so to speak. This mole was none other than GigaBear, who's actually also a member of my channel too, so shout out to GigaBear for their amazing work here again. So, GigaBear was role-playing as an anti-Grums activist and found their way into this Western Kabuki Discord. Unbeknownst to them, GigaBear was actually screenshotting and recording everything that they were doing and then giving it back to Grums himself. This then brings us to the spaghetti-o section of this video, and shout out to SmashJT who compiled all of this information on his website that I will be using as reference here, so thank you to him for all he does too. GigaBear got into this paywall Discord and found that this Western Kabuki channel was able to find the information they did on Grums again on a website that no longer exists, and they were able to find his old passwords and more, which then allowed them to infiltrate Grums' old business and find information behind his back. By, according to Grums and GigaBear's investigation, by basically accessing the dark web and getting hackers to illegally break into Grums' company and pull this information through, like I said, in illegal means. Here's some of what GigaBear found. One user named ThiefPal says it without realizing GigaBear was screenshotting everything that, okay, so I was bored and someone who I met has a bunch of historic data breaches, so they went through a single pass looking for Grums. This turned up an email address and then a search again for the email address. And eventually they got 3 to 4 email logins and a few associated passwords. Now at this stage, if people have unique enough passwords which they reuse between accounts, you can go back and search for totally unrelated account names using that unique password, and this is where I found out about. I don't see it in the search, so I guess I'll continue. There's an email address that it's using the same weird password that Grums has been. And it turns up in a bunch of extremely not safe for work forum posts looking for catfight content. There's a fake LinkedIn profile owned by and a defunct blog full of weird anime drawings of women fighting. All this content is about women fighting. Then one user named GamerVer would say this: really should enlist credentials, in my opinion, regardless if they work or not. Then another user just posts Grums' personal information and password for this old website that he used to run. Then ThiefPal would say they're quasi-public, but alright, remove that screenshot. Unfortunately for them though, GigaBear got all of this. Then another user named B, who apparently is also a Twitter user named WashYourCrack, that has also been harassing Grums for a while now, just starts posting all of Grums' personal information, passwords, and more on this Discord server. So what Grums ended up stating is that this group, this Western Kabuki, basically broke the law, went into the dark web, and hacked into Grums' accounts to get some sort of leg up or gotcha on him. They were so desperate for a win because their side has lost so much, they decided to literally break the law to get their gotcha against him. And what they did was a blatant unlawful act, and it's cyber stalking and data breaching pretty much. And then Grums told us and everyone watching that he has all this information himself and more that GigaBear has given him that this group has done to him, and is currently preparing an FBI report to his personal contact there to file it. And in turn, with the amount of info he has been proving, this group broke the law numerous times to get their gotcha, which ended up not really being a gotcha at all, because all they found was that Grums ran an adult softcore website that posted models basically in cosplay and I guess hentai for lack of a better term, which again, none of that is really illegal, and by today's standards, nothing shown or made was anywhere to my knowledge anywhere nearly as bad as what's available right now on the internet. And the endgame goal basically here is that Grums wants these people prosecuted, arrested, and jailed for their obvious breaking of the law to get their gotcha against the very man that just lives rent-free in all of their heads. But it gets worse, because of course it does. Then Grums and GigaBear found that the failed Kotaku writer who got fired for being anti-Semitic, that's Alyssa Mercanti by the way, was a part of this Western Kabuki channel and said this on their Discord: "Hi, hello people, I may need some info help for reasons regarding SmashJT's previous employment." So Alyssa Mercanti, who also has fallen from relevance after losing her job and getting absolutely bodied by Gamergate all the time, and is also currently in a legal battle against SmashJT, has now decided with her last 2 remaining IQ points to use these hackers who broke the law already and got exposed to help her find information that is both personal and work related against the very man she is currently trying to sue for harassment by gaining information that she could then use against her opponent in court, I guess, but it's illegal, pretty much. So just a word of advice to anyone who's, suing anybody: if your entire reputation and money is on the line, maybe don't post publicly to people you don't know on a Discord server that only requires you to pay $10 to access that you want hackers to illegally gain information about the guy that you're suing. This is all so beyond stupid, but sadly none of this surprises me that these people would stoop this low. The idea, as Grums told us, is that he's target number 1, Smash I guess is 2, and then I guess me and Yellow Flash and others are the rest of the targets, and that these people are genuinely resorting to illegally accessing content or accounts to get some sort of gotchas against these people who keep bodying them with facts and actual receipts in the public eye. And they're so hell-bent on winning this culture war that they've lost so resoundingly bad already, they are literally stooping down to criminal levels to get some sort of win in themselves. Because they know that if they have to play on a leveled playing field, their ideology or beliefs would hold absolutely zero water in an even fight, and they know this. And let's be real, guys, now that this has been exposed, Smash JT now has another big gotcha against Lisa Mercanti for his case, because she has now openly admitted to asking people who broke the law to obtain Grums' personal information to now help her to gain more info on Smash. If Smash wasn't already going to win in this suing thing against this woman, he now has the means to sue her even further, and she can really blame no one but herself. These people's derangement is ruining no one's lives but their own, but it somehow gets even worse. Next, we have Nick Calandra. So, if you forgot who this is, Nick is one of the heads of Second Wind, an already failing YouTube channel made up of the escapist journalists and content creators. Without Yahtzee Croshaw, that's the zero punctuation guy, being a part of Second Wind right now, this entire channel, to be honest with you, it would be dead already. Yahtzee is basically carrying all of these guys on his back alone, and Nick Calandra has been exposed in the past to be trying to get a gotcha against people like Grums too. Nick Calandra had a supposed expose video in the works at Second Wind on Grums during the height of Gamergate 2. Only for GigaBear, yep, the same GigaBear that infiltrated this Discord server here, exposed Nick Calandra about a year back on his expose by revealing that Nick's entire expose was actually based on false information and fake stories that GigaBear told Nick via email just to troll him. Then when Nick was almost ready to release this video to get a gotcha against Grums, GigaBear came out first and revealed the emails publicly that GigaBear had been lying to Nick to both waste his time and resources and to expose him. GigaBear also, by the way, infiltrated back then into Nick Calandra's Discord, where they ended up doxing Grums about a year ago. Some of the things said by the users in this group, as they state here, not if it's not him, there are several people in the US with all 3 of those names. Maybe there is some registry for debtors and bankruptcies with actual info, like I can look up persons here if they are in debt easily. At one point, someone posts Grums' personal info, but it gets redacted here, and then it gets renamed to Nick's Secret. Let's not share addresses in here, even if public record. Here's more of Nick's Discord said, as this person then states. Not sure how much of this is a good idea to be discussing publicly, but I feel like we're approaching a line here. I mean, you are absolutely right, Justin, but is it not fun? Nick then plainly says here near the end, if you find stuff, feel free to DM it to me, but yeah, any personal details or anything like that, don't post it in here. I'm not going after him personally, I'm going after his business dealings. Then all of the so-called expose was then exposed by GigaBear right before Nick went live, where GigaBear would say this. For weeks, Nick Calandra of Second Wind Group has been publishing an endless stream of smears and baseless claims against Grums and myself. I sought to demonstrate how desperate this man is to publish anything he can use to that end, no matter how flimsy or lacking of corroboration or veracity. So I sent him an anonymous email with a story too good to be true. I then posted a tiny fraction of the supposed conversation to my Twitter, knowing that where attacking Grums is concerned, he would immediately run the story before he had even verified it, and he did just that. Rustintail, the user, does not exist. In fact, Rustintail is an anagram of Urinalist. The project is supposedly backed but does not exist either. The conversation is a complete fabrication made in page source between 2 of my own Discord accounts, and he fell for it hook, line, and sinker. So as you can see on screen here, GigaBear collected everything he sent Nick Calandra, and none of it was actually real. Both accounts in this Discord speaking to one another was simply just GigaBear speaking to themselves via 2 different accounts to make up a conversation that Nick would take as bait to use as a gotcha. This would then lead to Nick saying this to GigaBear via email before this all happened. Yowza, I need to verify this before I run with it. We'll keep your identity completely anonymous. Would you be okay with adding me on Discord, jumping on a call, screen sharing this conversation so I can verify it's real, and then we'll take a minute to discuss how I can run this so that your identity is kept secure. So now that you know how badly Nick Calandra got burned by GigaBear and Grums already, this now brings us to today, with the Western Kabuki Discord channel that Nick Calandra, to the surprise of nobody, was in that same Discord channel talking to people. Nick Calandra was then screenshotted by GigaBear again a year later in this Western Kabuki Discord channel, to where Nick calls Stuttering Craig of Side Scrollers a weak man, and then openly admits to doxing Grums in his own words. Here's what he said. Not surprising at all, Craig is a weak man with zero conviction, screws over everyone around him, and then plays the victim. He worked at Enthusiast Gaming during the same time I did, and I didn't know who he was then. Now I do, after he let Grums go on his show and say I doxed him with zero pushback. Well, Nick, you did dox Grums a year ago. Why are you lying? The internet has all of the receipts. So all of these people and more are all in this Discord server. Maybe they've left by now, which would probably be a good idea for them, let's be real. And they were all trying to create these coordinated attacks against people like Grums, Smash, and more to destroy their reputations in order for them to lose their followings and power in the culture war and Gamergate as well. As Smash JT shows here, is posing a plain text email and password a crime if done for malicious purpose? Posting someone else's email and password in plain text with malicious intent could indeed be considered a crime in many jurisdictions, though the specifics depend on the laws of the country or region in question. It further states here, harassment or cyberbullying if the goal is to harass, intimidate, or harm this individual. Example, by exposing their private communications or enabling account takeover, this could violate anti-cyberbullying or harassment laws. This next part states, if it ties accounts together that were meant to be private, is that a dox? And here's what it says. Yes, tying together accounts that were meant to be private, especially using data breach information like passwords, can absolutely qualify as doxing, depending on how it's done and what happens with the information. Doxing, or doxing, same thing, but whatever, is a strictly defined legal term in the US of A, and is generally referring to the act of publicly revealing private or identifying information about someone, often with malicious intent, such as to harass, shame, or harm them. If you're using breach password data to correlate accounts, uncover someone's real identity, and then expose that connection, example, linking an anonymous handle to a real name or private details, it fits the doxing mold. So, under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, what the Western Kabuki channel has done with those three people in charge of it, again to refresh your memory, that is Bird Respecter, Alex Goldman, and Juniper, all indeed, according to Grums and GigaBear, use their platform to maliciously break into Grums' personal accounts from over 20 years ago to expose him. And if and when Grums sends his FBI report, if the information is as sound as he claims, these three and likely more are all implicated and could easily face criminal charges or could even be jailed. But that's not even all of it, sadly. Nick Calandra has also been exposed again by GigaBear, which I mean, come on, man. GigaBear has you up like 2 or 3 to 0 at this point. You gotta start fighting back. Bro is like Batman fighting a random criminal in the streets of Gotham, the criminal being Nick Calandra, by the way. And at this point, he just thinks he's gonna be the one to take the Batman down, and instead he just keeps getting stomped. Anyway, GigaBear leaked this also about Nick Calandra from the Western Kabuki chat, where he said this: if anyone in dev here knows folks at CI Games at the actual studios and want to put them in touch with me, this guy is an effing clown. I know some people and I'm already reaching out, but boy, this guy is something. The fact that he paid to make this an ad of all things, just gross. So, now Nick Calandra is trying to come after Marek Tymiński. That's the CEO of CI Games. That's the studio that made Lords of the Fallen, by the way. And Nick Calandra hates Marek Tymiński because why exactly? Marek made a poll on Twitter a few months back asking players if Lords of the Fallen's character creator should have the options listed as both type A or B, or instead rename them to simply male or female. So, Marek Tymiński let the fans of his games decide what they would put in the game with a poll, and overwhelmingly, as you would expect, male and female won. So, Marek, true to his word, said, okay, cool, that won, and then they implemented that via a patch into Lords of the Fallen across every console and PC and all that. So now when you play the game, it's no longer body types, but just male or female, and that's it. Besides this, the only other things Marek Tymiński has done, I guess, that could maybe anger Nick and his kind is Marek is pro-player and pro-freedom of speech. He doesn't believe in silencing anyone for their words, even if those words disagree with him, and he just wants his games to be cool and give players what they want and be free of agenda or political bias, you know, the way how old games used to be. But I guess just wanting to have your games be, devoid of political correctness or anything like that, that now makes Marek Tymiński a villain in their eyes. So for these reasons, and Marek also saying that the West could learn from China when it comes to making female characters, which I mean based, but he's right, this now somehow means he's evil and must be stopped according to Nick Calandra. You ask me? It seems like Nick is just so desperate for a win after being completely curb stomped by his so-called enemies for so long, that he is now trying to lash out at anyone that he seems to be deeming problematic. But what he doesn't realize is that all of this is actually doing is showing everyone who he really is deep inside, which is that Nick is a spiteful and hateful man. I mean, his own former co-worker who goes by Other Frost, I don't even think this Other Frost guy likes me because I'm pro Gamergate. I'm just assuming, I don't know, but he did a whole video where he exposed Nick Calandra with actual audio and video that he recorded while working at Second Wind, showing how Nick wasted company funds and would put his own personal vendettas in front of making content for the channel instead. How Nick is still there at Second Wind is beyond me. Maybe he has some sort of legal contract that he can't be removed or something. But the fact that his own allies turned on him because he was too toxic and fake is insane. But this is the guy we're dealing with here, who again is tied to Western Kabuki in all of this and now wants Marek Tymiński in his latest target attack. And honestly, hopefully GigaBear somehow also convinces Nick that he works at CI Games someday and clowns him again, because now would that just be peak comedy. But as you can see from all the information exhaustively provided in this video that I will now unfortunately have to edit myself while I drink coffee, is that these people absolutely despise us for the simple reason that we are trying to fix video games, while they want it to remain an echo chamber that ruins your favorite hobby to finance their political agendas and beliefs and grifts. Finally, before I go, I have one more example that also recently dropped and kinda made me want to make this video in the first place. So Opera GX is a web browser. I don't use them, and now I will never consider using them in the future either, and they recently had this tweet where they said this: "We're currently developing a feature that'll remove any trace of Grums from the web." Of course, it got likes from the kinds of people who hate Grums because they're told to, but to me and others, as we publicly stated on Opera GX's page, this just proves that they're a politically aligned company at heart. And they, like everyone else I showed in this video, would rather you all live on your knees eating their slop content instead of seeing these people for who they really are. Obviously, Opera GX's thing is a joke, but the fact of the matter is, taking what has happened to Grums for doxing and more, which was real and happened, they are now also advocating for censorship. As this thread within this post said, "Thanks for showing your colors, immediately uninstalled," and then Opera GX would respond, "I thought comedy was legal again." Someone else would respond, "What comedy? Because what you are considering company is greatly disrespectful to a large number of people who use Opera GX." And they're right, they're advocating for dogpiling, harassment, doxing, and now censorship. And then Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers chimed in too. "This is why I don't take the Grums hate seriously. The type of people that are mad about it are deranged, and they demand you have to care of as much as they do, and if you don't, they lose it. These weirdos keep accusing me of being a defender of his yet conveniently never show any receipts. It's mental illness." Jeremy is right, and altogether I would encourage all of you to never use Opera GX ever again going forward. They are clearly politically aligned against players. They support doxing, blackmailing, hacking, and harassing those that they disagree with. It's funny how even now I tell you guys not to harass these people, because I still don't want you to stoop down to the level, because in all actuality, their own actions prove that they are incredibly corrupt and delusional, without any of us from Grums, Smash, Flash, or me and beyond doing anything. These people keep proving time and again that it is morally right to boycott their browsers, reject their channels like Second Wind, and never support anything these people had any part in, from Kotaku, or resorting to hacking people to get information illegally because you're just so desperate for a win after losing for so long. All of this is pathetic and laughably just going to blow up in their faces, and I hope those who illegally gained information on Grums do end up getting prosecuted and either go to jail or get charged at least, because this needs to stop. It's only one side of this war that is resorting to trying to bring actual harm upon others, and it's not the side that we're on. We'll keep winning with real logic and facts while the enemy continues to live in their dark fantasy world within their heads, where they all think they're the actual winners, when in reality they've been exposed to plenty and admitted to coordinating harassment campaigns against those they could never defeat in an actual debate if it were to really happen. So vote with your wallets, think with your brains critically, always question everything, and I thank you for watching. And please support those who fight for video games and reject these ghouls who want your favorite franchises and hobbies to be reduced to nothing but a stool that they want to use to cry their agenda from. We will fix this industry and they cannot stop us, but thank you, and I'll see you again.